No, you're not seeing things, ladies and gentlemen. It might be first thing in the morning here in New York. It might be on lunch break in the UK. But the reason we're up so early, and maybe you're on break in the UK, because we have a special treat. Because this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are on Sportswire Radio Land, we are speaking with a man that was certainly referred to us by a man I guess we can both say is a mutual friend of ours. But our guest here, in many ways, is kind of the UK deathmatch counterpart to many friends of Sportswire Radio. And what a small world the wrestling world is, because in particular, we share one very, very mutual friend, and on top of that, he's wrestled a slew of previous Sportswire Radio guests. And after all, I have been in this so long doing wrestling coverage that it's only a matter of time before he probably knew somebody that he's wrestled that has been on this platform. But his resume speaks for itself. When you think about the world of deathmatch and hardcore wrestling, he may not say he's a legend. He may not say he's one of the best. But as far as I can tell, he's definitely one of the people that I want to talk to. And he's definitely one of the people that we want to talk with today to talk about the UK deathmatch scene, because we know so much about what goes on here in the US with the likes of, well, I'm going to break it, Hardcore and Mac 10 and Obey and Jimmy Controversy, Mikey Anarchy, even guys that might call themselves hardcore, like Atomic Titan, a.k.a. the Hardcore King. But this man has really done it, and he's gone through a TV or two. He's gone through a bin. He's gone through forks. He's gone through a whole number of things. And after all, he's so hardcore that yesterday, in announcing him, I'll guarantee you that no other podcaster has done this. I actually did myself a little bit of blood that was real, actually, to get ready for him. In fact, I actually was trying my own version of being a hardcore podcaster. Well, I don't know if I'm going to go into that world, although some people might actually want me to do that because they might want me to get me off the air. But our guest here certainly needs no further introduction. I guarantee you that he'll never be on a podcast like this one again. Well, we are live on the radio, and he'll probably may never want to come back on a show. I'm only kidding, but we'll have to find out. But this man, he certainly needs no introduction. He has been doing it for over 20 years in this great sport. He even had a break in between, but he's reinvented himself, and he's been a huge part of places, especially a company called PPW, Pursuit Pro Wrestling. It's a company we know very well here. It's a company that we've covered throughout the years on Sportswire Radio, and there's a lot going on there, but I think he's sick and tired of hearing me speak. So I'm going to give him the introduction that so many of his former opponents have actually gotten, since it is afternoon and morning here in New York. We're going to see how my voice is, but I'm going to do it because, after all, I'm trying to be hopefully not as hardcore as him, because he might actually want to put me through a TV. He might actually want to put me through a bin. He might even want to put me through a table with forks. But let's get right to it here and start the day off in style with the one and only Romania's best athlete and wrestler. So let's give him the introduction that we've all been waiting for here on Sportswire Radio, where all wrestling matters. So with that, without further ado, here on the Sports Report, number one global sports show, the one and only UK deathmatch hardcore legend, Romania's best athlete and wrestler. His name is Radu. My friend, good afternoon.
Hi there. I have to say that's the longest ring introduction I've ever done. Well, I say ring introduction. It's maybe the longest introduction
I
I've
know
ever
it
had.
feels like that on Sportswire, because everybody that comes on, this is a different show. I get messages all the time from people around the world in all forms of wrestling. They go, your show's different. I go on these other shows, and the guy's like, well, can you tell me about yourself? And they didn't really know who you are. you come on, and I really feel like I'm in the main event of WrestleMania. So I appreciate that.
I wouldn't oversell me that much. I'm literally just a guy from the middle of Yorkshire with an interesting family background who happens to do a very niche form of pro wrestling. But thanks anyway.
Well, we celebrate that here on Sportswire Radio because we literally celebrate all forms of wrestling, and that's kind of how I've been able to do this as long as I have for over 5 years. But enough about the pageantries. It is an absolute honor to have you here, Radu Bulat. And what I always like to do is I like to do things differently. I know you've done a lot of interviews before, and like I said, they were very good interviews, well-spoken individuals that interviewed you. But I like to start in the current tense because obviously you wrestle for a company called Pursuit Pro Wrestling, which I have actually covered here. And like I said, what a small world, because I am kind of the only man that really does all forms of wrestling around the world. And I've noticed that obviously the company has gone into a new facility, which is kind of wild in a way, because I always have gotten used to the old facility where we've seen so many great moments, and you've been a part of it. So I kind of want to start at the top here for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio. And what does it mean to you now to see PPW now go into a new facility here?
Well, I'll be honest with you, and I've told both Liam and Nathan, who actually run PPW, this before. I didn't have the highest expectations of PPW when it first started up, because I've been around for a while, maybe not 20 years, but, I've been around the wrestling scene in the UK for a while. A lot of schools out there, they'll overpromise and then they'll underdeliver.
Sure.
There's so many schools out there that will say, yeah, we'll train you to be a pro wrestler. We'll do this. We'll do that.
They'll take your money, and then basically, you're left with
pretty much. They'll teach you how to bump. They'll teach you how to lock up. They'll teach you how to put on basic holds and do slams and things like that. But they won't really teach you the lessons that quite a lot of people really need to learn if they're trying to get into the wrestling business. PPW did that. And not only did they do that, they also gave me the proper direction and advice in order to how to get into this, new genre of wrestling, which, I'll be honest with you, I'd never even picked up a chair until I did that one hardcore match for people.
Well, it's funny. It's so funny about that because, and I want to say hello to some people. I know people are like, Tom, what the heck are you doing? Because they know me as a late bird, but I'm like, this is different. You're here. It's a big deal. But, you've wrestled guys like
I'm
Paul
living the
Bailey.
gimmick as my dark room.
I'm a pretty dark guy in my own way. People always say, well, all you do is wear black. And shout out to my buddy, Mr. Jake Matthews, another hardcore stand who's, by the way, having a thing called the Riot in the Ring coming up on June the 1st. And maybe Jake can find a way to book you out there. But different conversation for a little while part of the conversation. But, you wrestle a guy like Paul Malin in a totally different match from where you are now. And, you kind of have reinvented yourself. And I know Paul very well. We'll get to Paul later on. But how did you kind of make yourself where you've reinvented your career, where you went from a guy that, could do a lot of technical stuff. You've done stuff. Kieran McQueen, great technical match. Even the match with Kemper had, was a total straight up hardcore match. So, for those out there, because I know a lot of people listen to my platform differently than other shows you do. How are you able to reinvent yourself then?
I credit PPW for that, in all honesty.
Talk to us about it.
Also, the wrestling scene in the UK post COVID lockdowns, post speaking out, it kind of changed things. Well. It changed things a lot, and it got to the point where I was in my mid-30s. I'm in my late 30s now.
I wasn't going to ask.
I've been told that I look young for my age.
You look, it's funny. I wouldn't know that you were like late 30s. I mean, you look like you'd probably, I'd say 27, 28.
Yeah. Like I said, I live the gimmick. Anyway, yeah. So I came to the conclusion that if I wanted to really, I didn't have any illusions that I'd be able to earn a fortune from wrestling or, even wrestle full time. So I just kind of had the mentality that, okay, if I'm going to be in wrestling, I should be doing it for fun. I mean, ideally, I'd like to also get paid a shit ton of money for it, but, there's a lot of give and take when it comes to wrestling. So I'd always loved hardcore wrestling, deathmatch wrestling. Ever since I was about 14, 15, 16 years old when I first started watching wrestling, and I was kind of fascinated by the hardcore, the hardcore division of the then WWF.
Sure, we're talking about the days of Raven, the Big Show, Kane. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and when I first got into wrestling, hardcore wrestling, it had its stigma, and it still kind of does in many ways. But it's a little bit more accepted these days, I think. Which arguably I think is both a combination of a different generation of talent, of guys who actually spent more than a few years learning how to properly wrestle, rather than just were just untrained backyarders who wandered around hitting each other with light tubes and stuff like that and just bleeding all over the place. Just generally being unprofessional. Let's be honest here. And then we just had a bunch of guys who kind of really, really had a love for the business and an understanding for the intricacies, the psychology of wrestling, and just some, just general self-respect to actually do the style in a way which is, both entertaining and also, coherent.
Sure.
Like it's one thing to say that it's garbage wrestling. It's another thing to kind of look at it and think, okay, what are the, just to try and steel man the arguments that quite a lot of the detractors of the style have. What is it about the style that they don't like? If it's blood, okay, some people don't like to see blood. Fair enough. Is it the particular gimmicks that they don't like? I mean, some people, they're okay with the pots and pans stuff, but they're not okay with the excessive bleeding aspect. So it's kind of like, all right.
But I have a counter argument to that, and I get this all the time because again, this is really the house that you're hearing that covers everything. So I am unabashedly, proud of it. I cover all forms of wrestling. I'm unabashedly, and I'll continue to say that I am proud of that. But to me, I would counter that you like going to the movies, right? You like watching horror movies. You like watching action movies, and you see some of your favorite things. We're all fans of John Wick. We're all fans of Equalizer. We're all fans of all these different forms of action movies, right? And we see all these types of gruesome deaths, and nobody has a problem with that. But people, for whatever reason, say, well, there's too much blood. Well, they don't do this. Well, what? Because it wasn't Ospreay Danielson. But in my opinion, hardcore wrestling, to me, is a very, very fine craft. And in fact, to me, it's a highly skilled thing to do because not everybody can do it. And you've been an example of that because you have been a guy that's also, again, I've seen your work, and I've watched you against Paul Malin. I know Paul Malin very well. Paul Malin is a pro wrestler in this country. And you adjusted to where you wrestled guys like Banshee and Lou Nixon. So to me, I think it's a very skilled technical craft just as much as being a hardcore wrestler than, let's say, being the person that can maybe have the most holes or, be able to do the things in the ring that you might want to see in an Ospreay or a Danielson or anybody else out there that people certainly write about in their favorite wrestling magazines or rant about on X.
True, but when it comes to Danielson and Ospreay, their wrestling, technical wrestling, high-flying wrestling, whatever you want to, whichever hybrid style that we'd like to call it, they're wrestling at a very high level.
Oh, for sure. No question about
just bringing it back onto the analogy with a movie, the best hardcore wrestling that I've seen could be analogous to, where everything that they do actually has meaning rather than just being gore for the sake of gore. It's a combination. It's like a change between, some of the best horror movies that we've ever seen. Like Hellraiser is always going to be one of my favorite horror movies.
Sure.
Compared to, I don't know, some like B movie that was made in some obscure, some obscure film studio in Canada somewhere.
And I probably saw in Tubi actually. Though I was scrolling through my TV the other day.
Yeah. Probably had a review by Elvira as well.
She's still alive, I suppose.
Yeah, surprisingly, I say I live the gimmick. She is literally living the gimmick.
I was gonna say that as well. I'm like, she really? I think she really has always been the same. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
bloody hell.
I don't know. Yeah, let's not break kayfabe with that. Let's get back onto PPW and save my door from being kicked in.
But PPW again, it's a company I know very well, and Liam Slater is a name that's been mentioned here in the platform. Nathan Black has been a name. In fact, Nathan Black has been mentioned I've been covering British wrestling since COVID, so that's a name that's come up a lot. And Liam Slater, I know very well through some of the things that Mr. Carnage himself has said, because he's obviously a very, very well acquainted figure. I'll get to him later on, but talk about them and how they've run the company, and the company's really been. It's been one of the better. And I'm gonna say because you're here, because I cover a lot of companies. There are some companies that obviously have their way of doing things, and God bless, and I'm always about that. But I think this company here has always kind of given everybody a little bit of something, and also had an academy that you've obviously pointed out in different shows and kind of touched upon very briefly. But talk about their influence not only on the company but really on you, more or less.
Well, Nathan, first and foremost, is a businessman. And if I recall correctly, he's also worked in the entertainment industry here in the UK.
Yeah, yes, so, I've heard that as well.
Yeah, he knows a lot about the performative side of things, and that shines through with his character. I don't know if he'd ever say that he's like the best technical wrestler or anything like that, but he did learn from some of the best people that you could, pre-COVID. And he, to his credit, decided during the COVID lockdowns that he was going to be productive with his time, and he bought a ring. And he did as much as he could on his own. And then when the lockdown started to, ease up, he started to get help from a lot of the people that he'd gotten connections with during, pre-lockdown.
Sure.
I think he also vaguely told me that during his 20s, he tried to like get into Ring of Honor at some point. This is when he was working over the United States. I don't know the story in its entirety.
I won't hold it against you. I won't hold you to
it. Quite a lot of the story that he told me has since disappeared from my mind. So if you ever get him on, perhaps maybe he
at this point, I mean, I just had Mustafa Khan on 2 weeks ago, and at this point, I mean, I was supposed to have on a few other people, so I would say probably he will come on at some point, because at this point, what I've learned about my platform is that, especially when it comes to the UK wrestling scene, I am really like the only man left that pretty much covers everything. So I am going to certainly say that I'm certainly sure of this, that he'll probably come on one day.
Yeah. And as far as Liam Slater is concerned, Liam Slater is easily one of the best coaches. Like, he has a natural talent for coaching.
I've heard that. Yes, I've heard that.
Some of the people that they have at PPW used to train at this other promotion, this other school that I used to go to pre-lockdown called EBW.
Yeah, heard of it.
Quite a lot of them, and some of them will probably admit to this. Quite a lot of them were lost causes, at least by the standards of the trainer that we had at the time. Just little things, but Liam in his fucking genius was able to pick out their strong points and emphasize them to the point where, combined with his, coaching technique, he was able to get the best out of them.
Sure.
And in some cases, they've improved leaps and bounds to the point where even I'm impressed, the guy's a miracle. I'm not even joking. The guy is a miracle worker when it comes to, teaching people how to get into the, teaching people the technical aspects of wrestling. And a lot of it, I think, is just down to he just has such a good mind for wrestling. I mean, even me, being a fairly decent technical wrestler, even pre-lockdown, even I found my technical proficiency going up by leaps and bounds just by taking a few training sessions with Liam.
Well, I equate that, and I will get to comments. I equate it to my rule of thumb in anything in life, and I was taught this at a young age from my dad when I was attempting to play musical instruments, is that there's always somebody out there that you can learn from. There's always somebody that can help you in terms of, even if you might be the best, there's somebody out there that'll still know more than you. So at the end of the day, if there's a way that I can learn to improve my skills and performance, why not take advantage of it? You've certainly done that. I'm going to bring up your YouTube channel in a second, but we're going to put this here on our page. So if you're out there, I'd like people to follow Radu Bulat on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow him, because I promise you, this is a man you're going to be hearing a lot of here on Sportswire Radio coming up here. Let me say hello to some people here, first of all. Speaking of companies out there in the great state of Massachusetts, our friends over at NEW, they are certainly having a thing that I mentioned called Riot in the Ring coming up. It's on June the 1st, it's actually about 6 weeks from now, actually a little less than that. And they say, hello, Tom and Radu, and thank you for waking up early with us. Want to say hello to one of my fellow Hall of Famers. And by the way, NEW is actually owned by another Hall of Famer, Mr. Jake Matthews, who I'm wearing his shirt of right now. He is the Born to Battle briefcase winner, the best on the card. The good guy, CJ Black, who is my most recent Hall of Famer. Thank you for the kind words. Yes, it is early, but we have a reason. We're very honored to have Mr. Bulat on here. Also, another company out there, sort of kind of evolving like PPW in the great state of Iowa in the Midwest, the Iowa Midwest Federation Wrestling Company. It is early. Yes, it is, but we have a legend here with us. And speaking of hardcore legends, and he is the boogeyman of the Midwest. He is the DKW World Champion. He is the host of the Inside the Rope show from the IMF. It is kind of his show in a way, but I'll explain it to you one day down the road. It is Mr. Omen Black, and it's an honor to have Mr. Black and Mr. Bulat, one of my other buddies who also just wrestled a hardcore match not too long ago. See, I told you you'd be meeting people. That is Mr. Michael Christian, of course. Michael is from the great state of Indiana, and he just wrestled a match with a guy named Justin Parsley, and he says, hello, good morning. Omen would like to say a couple things here. Wrestling fans are very different from different aspects. Some like the moves, some like the storytelling, some like technical, and our fans love the violence and blood. And I think that's, to me, I always say there's always something for everybody, which is why I say all wrestling matters. Mr. Black would like to say, though, my problem with most deathmatch wrestling is the lack of psychology. I'd like to see all those weapon shots mean something. Make the crowd beg for it instead of expecting it. What do you think about something like that? That's an interesting point.
That's a fair point. Like, as much as I love ICW NHB, one of the biggest criticisms that I always get told is that a lot of it is just light tubes and doors, which I find very difficult to dispute in some cases. I mean, I'm not going to fault anyone who works ICW NHB, and Danny DeMonto has put on some of the most entertaining shows that I've ever watched, and
sure,
I'm still going through. I'm still going through the catalog of their shows right now, and I can be thoroughly entertained, by picking at any random show, but it's very difficult to say that there's I mean, you have to kind of look at it in the sense that you're as a guy who, when you're working any gimmick match, whether it's hardcore match, a table match, cage match, or whatever, you're trying to put over the gimmick. It's probably something. It's not. This isn't exactly something I can probably put across in the space of a simple a single podcast. But sure. You have to kind of you have to use the gimmick as kind of like an anchor, if that makes any sense. And you can still keep coming back to it. But when it comes to the biggest criticism, when it comes to deathmatch wrestling that consistently keeps being brought up, is making things actually mean something. And probably the best person, I think, when it comes to someone who understands the psychology of hardcore wrestling, is probably Masada, which makes sense considering that he was literally trained by Shawn Michaels in the same class as Brian Danielson, the same class as
if you're
Brian Kendrick.
Mr. Danielson, I think Mr. Danielson was in that class, right? Wasn't he in that class?
Yeah, Masada was trained in the same class as Brian Danielson, Brian Kendrick, Lance Cade, and I think a few other people as well. It was a really good class. Masada is definitely I love listening to some of his podcasts, or some of the interviews that he's done on different podcasts, and you can kind of tell that outside of his his usual I've been in the business too long. I'm saying that as someone who has actually been in the business too long as well.
Well, you know what I mean, I could certainly sympathize and respect your opinion and his opinion, and that reminds me of a friend of the show, Mr. Dean Allmark, who Mr. Allmark certainly has his feelings, but he's still out there, and I want to, before I do anything, I want to give an endorsement. If you ever want to go on a podcast, Mr. Omen Black is a phenomenal speaker. He is also a fellow wrestler. He is wrestling for a company that is in 300 to 400 seat plus venues, and they're filling out the shows. And they also speak kind of as wrestler to wrestler. So Omen, definitely, if you'd like to get in touch with Mr. Bulat, he is on Facebook, he is on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. I'll make sure that you get connected. But Omen's a fantastic speaker. Doesn't give you the over the top intros that I do. Doesn't give you, the bad funny jokes. Because I'm trying to, get canceled off the air and try to go to stand up comedy. And so he talks more, a plain spoken, more, wrestler to wrestler conversation where I'm basically trying to get canceled off the air. But kind of like Mr. Necro Daddy. That's why Mr. Necro Daddy likes me so much, because he can relate to some of my bad humor. He can relate to some of the over the top stuff because he loves that stuff. But you'd probably like Mr. Roman Black, and I'll make sure you guys get connected. But, speaking of that, I know you do a lot of these shows, and I wanted to ask you something totally different that I haven't heard anybody ask you on. And since I know I'm going to have a lot of people that watch my shows are different than anybody else's, because I think a lot of fellow wrestlers from all types and all around the world watch my show. And I have a lot of younger guys that also come in here because I'm a younger guy myself. And I would like to ask you, what advice would you have to any up and coming wrestlers?
Get a real job. Nah, I'm just kidding.
Well, I should have took that note 10 years earlier. I mean, I'm sure my mother would have loved to have gotten me I should have got a real job 10 years earlier, and I wouldn't be here.
No,
hey.
in all seriousness, study it like you would for a college exam. Treat this whole thing seriously. Even if you're just going to be a guy who's just going to be like wrestling once a month or wrestling just on weekends, take this stuff seriously, no matter what you're doing, and understand that you don't have to go out there and do a million things, and don't feel pressured to put on the best the best performance ever, because more than likely you're going to be performing at a very small venue, I'm not saying a know-nothing venue, but I'm saying it's going to be a venue where very few people are really going to notice or care if you mess up. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. You'll learn more from your mistakes than you ever will from just going out there and just being told what to do. And I wish I'd learned this lesson years and years ago. But everyone has to start somewhere.
Listen, and I think that's the best advice. And I always look at it again. A musician, sometimes the best gigs for them isn't going to Wembley. It isn't going to Madison Square Garden. It's actually in the venue. It might have 50 to 100 people, or it's an intimate setting. And you're able to, if you miss a note, you're able to go back and kind of learn to get the nerves. And I think that's great advice. And I thank you, Mr. Black, for the nice words, Mr. Omen Black. But not about me. I appreciate the friendship. Yes, we're definitely friends. As far as you would like to be friends with me, I'll take any friends. Only a bad joke. Sometimes less is more. Don't need to always go out there and do it. Remove the word that they always use is KISS, which means keep it simple, stupid. Not thinking about KISS the band, but actually KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Because what happens is, doesn't matter if you're in a hardcore match or a high spot match. Sometimes you want to slow it down to be able to, as Mr. Black, CJ Black, the other CJ Black talked about, make that moment more impactful. But speaking of individuals, I'd like to say hello to first. Now, you probably have heard of somebody that might be related to this individual. It's a man you wrestled once upon a time. And you obviously were on his podcast when he certainly shot on the world when I had him on here the first time. But this individual might be related to an individual named Jake Carnage, a.k.a. Necro Daddy. He kind of has more names than Madonna these days. But that individual says, I remember Sammy Callahan giving Kid Lycos the same advice, bro. And I mean, you want to say anything about that? And you might want to say anything about that match with that individual, because I loved when you put him through that "Can you book me UKW" sign. Remember when he brought out that UKW thing? Boy,
yeah, which question do you want me to answer first?
I don't know. I mean, you could start with.
I'll say this. Okay, I'll say this about that advice for Kid Lycos 2. Kid Lycos 2 took it, and look at him now. He's at he is wrestling at a high level. As I recall correctly, he's been to the US and Spain and around Europe quite a lot this year, and I think he might be going to Japan sometime in the next 2 months. I think I might be misremembering that, but
that's okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna hold it against
sometimes the best advice, is comes from people who actually know what they're doing. Surprise,
Absolutely.
surprise.
Absolutely.
Okay,
No
so
doubt about that.
right. How about the match with Chris, aka Necro Daddy, aka guy who may or may not be the person who sent this message.
I always like to
All right,
say it that way.
where do I want to start? Should I start with how the match first came about?
Yeah, I guess you know what? Because I watched the match a few times, and I think we mentioned it when Mr. Carnage himself was actually on the air. I'm almost 99.9% certain of it. But yeah, I actually think it'd be interesting to hear your side of things.
Okay, so it was post-lockdown. I'd first started training at PPW, and I wasn't entirely I was in the mentality that I wasn't entirely certain whether or not I really wanted to get back into the wrestling business, because lockdowns and all the drama that we had at EBW,
it was so
before
depressing.
lockdowns.
I had them all come on. It was like I don't even want to talk about it again.
Yeah, so basically, I had this mentality that, okay, I'll give it a go. I'll see how good I am, if I've lost anything, if I can improve. Liam Slater, as I said before, absolute genius, was able to start chipping away at the edges, and I was starting to think, hey, I'm actually getting better, and it was such a short space of time as well. And that's when I discovered that we actually have a deathmatch scene here in the UK, which, at the time, I kind of like. With the promotion EBW that I was part of, I kind of stayed in one place for two reasons. Number one, I've never actually told anyone this, at least not podcast. I've told people this, like person to person, but I was clinically depressed for about 6 years after the death of Chris Travis, who's one of the guys from Sheffield who was a big influence on me.
You mentioned him obviously in the past.
Yeah,
from promos.
I never really told anyone that, and I kind of hit a long while. And to be frank, I think I might have rubbed a few people the wrong way in those years. So, if anyone's watching this and you happen to be one of those people, hand on hearts, I apologize to you. So when I'd come back to wrestling after the lockdowns, I kind of thought to myself, okay, I want to be in, wrestling, but I also want to be in the mentality where I'm enjoying what I'm doing and I love what I'm doing. So I just looked around and I discovered that there was actually some guys out there in the UK scene that, loved deathmatch wrestling, loved hardcore wrestling. And I was kind of like, and this was like right at the time, like post lockdowns, when Rise had done their second God tournament, their second deathmatch tournament.
I think it was like summer. I want to say late summer 21, right? If I recall,
around about Halloween time.
I remember that.
And I just started watching Rise, and I was like, this is actually really fucking cool. And so I just kind of offhandedly said to Liam, if Rise wants, another body in their shows, I'll be happy to, do some stuff. And then I got talking to Chris, and we developed a friendship and an understanding that, yes, we both.
I'm happy you said why that you have a friendship with him, because we've been on together, and there's a lot of people out there that don't like him, but I happen to like him because he pretty much calls it that down the line, and he speaks the truth. So I'm happy that you're admitting that you're friends with him, because I happen to like him.
Yeah, I know that he does tend, like he'll fully admit that he does rub people the wrong way sometimes, and it might be just down to his personality. But
no, I think he says the truth. He speaks the truth. That's what it came down to. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, if you want. I love you, Chris. Seriously. But anyway, yeah. So how this whole match came about is that we'd offhandedly mentioned to each other about doing like a hardcore match at some point. And I also mentioned it to Liam, and Liam said, "Yeah, okay, we can do that." Now he gave us some guidelines, which is why the match itself was as chaotic as it was. It wasn't like completely and utterly uncontrolled. And if I recall correctly, it might have been like 3 or 2 weeks before the actual show where we had the hardcore match. Chris sends me a message because he worked at a furniture factory or something like that, or a furniture warehouse at the time, and he said, "Yeah, well, I've got these doors that we can probably use in the match. And he said, so I'm thinking you can probably like do a Death Valley drive or something off the apron.
Yes, I do. Yes, I remember that spot very well in the match. Yes.
Yeah, I said yes, but in the back of my head, I was thinking,
no.
maybe I wasn't entirely certain. Of course, then I get to the venue, and the first person that I see is Michael Caden.
Yes.
Top deathmatch guys in the UK.
Yep.
And then I look over to my left, and I see Danny O'Doherty, the promoter for Rise, and I'm like,
yep.
I'm going to have to do that spot now. Of course, I switched it up. I didn't do the Death Valley drive. I did the Northern Lights bomb off the apron, which, in retrospect, I actually kicked Chris in the balls right before we did that. Unintentionally. The idea was I was supposed to like do like a pump knee, which is just a move that I do quite frequently.
Yeah, I've seen you do it.
But I slipped on the apron and ended up being kind of like like a Harley race knee, with my foot ended up accidentally hitting him right in his balls, and Chris just went, "Oh shit!"
I can hear him.
I laugh at it. Yeah, I laugh at it very often. Anytime that I'll rewatch that particular clip, but hats off to Chris for volunteering to take that bump, because I was a little terrified in order to actually do the move. But it was that move that actually got me onto Rise, I think. So
really,
it is what. Yeah, well, it was after that match that Caden and O'Doherty gave me like some feedback, and then later in the month, I actually went down to my first ever live Rise show, where I saw the Deathmatch Outlaws and Lou Nixon. They basically beat the shit out of each other for about 10 whole minutes straight, and yeah, like the match is up on YouTube if you want to see it. This is obviously not the match itself. This is just the match that me and Chris had.
Yeah, I put it up there because I knew he would love it, and I thought, because we have this whole feature which I've now figured out how to master, and just going through the match and seeing it, I just thought that it would be kind of cool to show the feature here, and obviously, you see a match like this, and it led, as you said, to kind of your own rise, actually. I mean, so the irony of that, did you think going into the match or as the match is going on that it would lead you to doors opening in the way it did for you for your career?
Well, when I was going into the match, I was kind of thinking, okay, if it turns out to be okay, then I'll probably like put it onto my CV and have a word with maybe send it to the promoter at Rise, or anywhere else that would be willing to allow me to do hardcore matches, and I would have just said, well, I can do this stuff, I mean, you need to. That's another thing. Another bit of advice: get a good CV. Like, there's loads and loads of CVs that you can get online. So you just need to tailor one specifically for wrestling. And yeah, this is right before all the walls and things like that were built in this facility. And yeah, Leon Slater was the one who pushed that. Shopping towards me, he said, "Use this, Radu," and I was like, "Okay." There was actually a circular saw around there as well, which I'm very glad that no one gave me that, because it would have been kind of like, ugh.
See, I'm surprised, and we were talking about this off the air as we're speaking here at the one and only Radu Bulat, Romania's best athlete wrestler. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. You have voice of All Wrestling, where wrestling matters. This match reminds me so much of a GTS match. Now, we were speaking about this off the air. You were like, you weren't as familiar. Now, some of the wrestlers, which I'll talk to about in a little while with you, you were definitely familiar with, but you weren't. This is such a match that they would have on their show. This is such a type of thing where they'd have it kind of in this open, desolate warehouse factory looking thing with all these objects in and around it, and you guys are kind of doing things that you normally maybe wouldn't see on a show like this, and it just reminds me so much of that. But I think to do a match like this also goes back to what you said at the very beginning. I think there is a lot of creativity. There is a lot of skill in this, because this is an art. To me, what you're doing here in these things, you have to be able to think about them. You have to conceptually still be able to go through something like this. And I just think that, these particular moments in the match shows that there is a craft, there is a skill to this. And there is a level of creativity, and that's why I happen to enjoy these matches.
Well, what can I say? My life's full of wrong decisions. This is just one of them.
Hey, listen, people could say I've had plenty of wrong decisions, but you're here, and certainly, Mr.
Yeah,
Necro
I've just noticed this part. Chris actually wrote those messages on there.
Oh, I know he did, because I've seen him have some of those things I've had him on here twice, and I'm going to have him back on here probably in the next month or so, and I'm sure he'll have more of those things here. So yeah, I have no doubt he did that.
It's going to be interesting.
Oh, it's always interesting when he's here. Listen, now on YouTube, my viewership, if my all-time most
why did I sell that basket? I look back on this match and I just see loads of things that I would never do these days.
Well, that's why hopefully you keep whatever you can, and that's why I know you're selling that stuff. That's why you can go to Radu's social media pages. But there you see here, Mr. Daddy. He's certainly a larger-than-life figure here in this business.
Yeah, never changed, Chris. Never changed.
I hope he's not, because he's actually my second and third most viewed podcast in YouTube history. So, I mean, I hope he's not changing, because he brings the views. I mean, whether people like it or not, he brings the views, and he brought views on your YouTube channel as well. So,
yeah. All right. Oh yeah, I remember during this match. Yeah, this spot here. That could have gone really, really badly. Like, it was basically supposed to. I think the spot was basically supposed to lift me up on his shoulder to do kind of like an awesome bomb thing, and I was supposed to flip out. No, we kind of like messed up. We messed up, basically. Okay. Like we the idea was, I think he was supposed to lift me up onto his shoulder, like awesome bomb thing, and I was supposed to flop out and do some other stuff, but we mistimed it, and he ended up like dropping me on the back of my head. Luckily, I'm really good. I've got a really good neck on me, and I've put my hands down, so it wasn't that bad. But yeah, it could have been a whole lot worse.
And the medicine ball, oh my God, the medicine ball.
Yeah, I've done that spot before at that point, and yeah, thankfully it was one of the. It was
that takes me back to when I was a kid playing, basketball as a little kid, and they would have in practice. They would make us run from one length of the court to the other with the medicine ball. And they would go, I still remember my coach, Coach Mahoney, run with the medicine ball. And I was like always last with it, and he would just always yell at me. He would yell, Tommy! He would just yell at me with it. But different conversation for a different time. Obviously, you took it a lot more painful than I did, and certainly he's enjoying this. And I want to also say hello to one of my other fellow wrestlers here, Mr. Big Tex, by the way, all the way from the great state of Maryland. He says he loves deathmatch wrestling. He just doesn't do it personally, and he doesn't need to. He's a really big guy, by the way. He's like really big, and yeah, he's a really big guy. He's going to be wrestling Saturday coming up, and for DBW's Apocalypse show, which stay tuned for, because I have something for that on tomorrow's show. But yeah, there you go here, and there's the sadistic Mr. Oops, sorry, wrong. That's my audio going off. But there you go. But yeah, Mr. Daddy here. There you go here, and he's certainly having himself a lot of fun at your expense right now.
Yeah, it doesn't last for very long though.
Oh, I'm aware of it.
What else can I say about this match? The only other thing I remember about this match is the beginning, when we did the. Chris will remember the shoot headbutt spot that we did.
Well, I'll get to the finish here, because there's a lot more I want to talk to you about. But let's get to the finish here, because I'm actually want to get to. I only have so much time out there, and for you, Mr. Daddy. But as we see, we're getting ready for the finish, and obviously we're getting ready to finish this, and you look like you're about to be a happier man. See, I wanted to make sure that you got to see the best of the best.
Yeah, this is probably one of the best double stomps that I've ever done. This is literally the first finish that I ever perfected, and apparently, from what the referee Lee told me, I got up as high as he's ever seen me do, and he's seen me do that move for years. I've never got higher as that point.
And I want to congratulations on the win. I'm sure Mr. Daddy's unhappy I said that, but I wanted to ask you something, because I noticed you wear mechanics gloves. Is that a Sting reference or anyway? Because Sting was famous for always wearing mechanics gloves. Was there anything
no,
to
it
that?
Wasn't actually. Well, let me put it this way: at the time that this match happened, I was working for a promotion that did tours all across the UK, and I was always helping out with the ring. But unfortunately, the wood kind of had a lot of splinters in it, and it was getting to the point where each and every match, each and every show, and we were driving back home. I was literally like picking splinters out of my hand, and I was eventually.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling.
I just got the mechanics glove just to like pick up and move around. I didn't actually get the Sting reference until like ages later. When I was
like, okay, he dresses in black. He's all black. It's got to be something, even though he's a totally different wrestler than this thing. There had to be something there because I actually also own a pair of mechanics gloves for slightly different reasons, but kind of the same thing.
I mean, incidentally, I do use the Scorpion. I have gotten into using the Scorpion Deathlock as of late, so there's that.
Yeah, I did see that. I
don't do the Stinger Splash from the corner or the Scorpion Death Drop.
Everybody does the Stinger Splash, and I
also don't do the. I don't often do the face paint stuff, and I don't often do the mask of my own face with like that. That is that is even 20 years later. That is still funny.
Yeah, you know what? Everybody's each to its own. Also, let me say here, hello. I impregnated my wife by them, bro. We're luckily no longer needed. That's a good one. Good line there.
Well, you're a dad now, so as long as it's just the one.
He's talked about being a dad here on the platform, but he does want to say sorry. He does want to apologize, which is very nice of him that he apologized.
Yeah, he did apologize. He doesn't apologize after the match.
And he doesn't apologize. This man does not apologize very often. I can tell you that because I've gotten to know this man over the past several months. I actually apologized to him when he came on the first time because I was like, I should have brought you one last year, but I didn't. And then it was like he laughed about that I don't on the air, but I want to say hello to one of my buddies out there who also is he actually does great introductions. He actually introduced Matt Riddle not too long ago. Was just out there at a show with Mr. Devon Dudley, Mr. Dat Voice guy, Mr. DVG himself, also in my Hall of Fame. Good to see you. Good morning as well. And I want you to follow Radu Bulat. So if you want to watch more matches of him, that's his YouTube link. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Support this man. Support what he does in the ring. He is awesome. He is one of my favorites out there to talk with. And we are here on Sportswire Radio. And I will be back here later tonight because I'm actually doing two double duty tonight. So we're going to see how my voice holds up later tonight. I'll be here 11 o'clock Eastern time with Alan Michaels. Alan Michaels will be here live. He's going to talk new music. He's going to talk about his return to the ring potentially coming up, plus much more. So tune in for that. And also, we have an internet radio station. So if you have podcasts out there, if you like live music, if you want to be a DJ, if you want to be a presenter for your own podcast, I do that free of charge on behalf of the community. I handle all the work for it. We're actually live right now on it. It's called sportswireradio.org. And join the conversation anytime. You're always welcome. We are here with the one and only Romania's best athlete and wrestler, Mr. Radu Bulat. I have to ask you also about a couple of people. Going back to COVID, you wrestled a guy in NCW, part of the triple threat match there, in Jackson Hart. Jackson Hart is a guy that I know very well, and I'm really happy to see that he's come pretty far in the British wrestling scene the past few years. Because when I interviewed him about 3 years ago now, just about, he really had very little experience under his belt. He was looking to actually come over here to the States and go to the Rhodes Academy and get training there. But I don't think he needs it right now because he has really been one of the more well-established, up-and-coming independent wrestlers. I know, was certainly not a match that Mr. Hart really was the main attraction of. But I was just curious in just what were your impressions of being in the ring with Jackson Hart? And again, a guy I couldn't say enough good things about because I've had him on here at least 3 or 4 different times during the COVID run.
Well, I actually first met him on that show.
Okay.
Like the NCW Notorious Championship Wrestling. I think it was basically this promotion that did these shows out of the beer garden of this pub in Chesterfield.
Yep.
And I'd been introduced to it by a mutual friend because apparently the promoter was they were into kind of like abseiling, I think, and my friend is kind of like into them, so they kind of like okay. Here's Radu. He does this type of stuff, and I was like, okay, I'll take the match. Unfortunately, the card. The reason why we got put together is because the card card subject to change. And
I've heard the term all too often.
I think we had something like 5 cancellations on that show alone. So the guys, the promoter was kind of like beside himself. So we kind of had to shifts
Eeny,
stuff
meeny,
around. So
miny, mo, catch it.
yeah. So all right, we'll put this Romanian dude with this like half Bangladeshi dude, and we'll put this big fucking giant haystack fucking looking dude in there, and
You
we'll
went
see
from
what
world to
happens.
sport. You went from hardcore and high flying all in between. I mean, what?
Yeah,
Really?
like it was a good like mix of styles, and also that guy, the Jason Jacobs, trained with him, known him for years. We both did the went onto that touring promotion together for about half a year to a year, I think. Both of those were just kind of just there to have fun. And Jackson Hart is easily one of the most nicest guys I've ever met
Oh
in
my
wrestling, and
God, I
that's
had
saying
him on
something.
here. Such a nice
Yeah.
guy. I mean, he is just, I couldn't say enough good things about. I wish I could bring him back on, but he's always so busy. He's
Yeah, and
so busy.
also, if I recall correctly, he got injured sometime last year. I can't remember if it was a shoulder injury or a scapular injury,
Yeah,
but
I
it
think
was really, really bad to the point
yeah,
where
I think it was on Facebook. I did see that. Yep.
yeah, I really he's the guy that's trying to get me. Well, he recommended that I try and speak to the promoter of Sacrifice Pro. It's kind of like
Yes.
it's a promotion that doesn't take itself very seriously, but it looks like they have a lot of fun on their shows, and I'm like, yeah, I want in on that stuff. So at the end of the day, as long as the fans have fun, as long as we have fun, putting on a good show, regardless of whatever it is that we're doing in the ring, then it's all good.
Oh, absolutely, and love certainly, Mr. Jackson Hart. I want to say a little. One of my friends, Mr. Ethan Dixon, out there, up and coming trainee. Radu, I had the privilege of watching you at LDN. Incredible, man. Absolutely. Thank you, Ethan, for tuning in. And
Yeah, where
speaking
was
of,
that, by the way?
he can certainly let us know, and we're going to be here for a little while longer. I have to ask you, coming back to PPW, Joshua Kemper, the big man Kemper. Now, you wrestled him, and certainly what a match it was, kind of a little bit of everything there, and there was actually no finish to the match. And I had Kemper on, I want to say about maybe 8 months ago, and he is probably one of the more talented, up-and-coming big men in this country. And he's obviously been a man that has established himself in multiple promotions as a champion, a world champion. I have to ask you, what's your impressions of him? And he's a guy, again, I can't say, another guy I can't say enough good things about. And a guy I really hope that is going to realize his full potential in the fact that this man, what he can do when he knows, and I say this in a good way, kind of like a monster. He's like the true definition of like a Romanian monster. He really, when he knows his full potential, this man, I have no doubt, could, if he wants to, could even travel and wrestle overseas. And kind of like one guy I've interviewed not too long ago, Jinnah, where Jinnah is now in the United States, wrestles all over the place. And you have to talk about the potential of this man, the big man. Literally, his name is the big man Kemper.
Kemper.
Yes.
Also known as Big Sexy Kemper, as we refer to him in PPW for reasons which are very obscure. But I'm sure that if you have him down here again, I'll explain it. But it is
I would bring him back. Yes, I would.
Kemper is easily one of my favorite guys to train with, and I'm really looking forward to us having another match at some point, especially now that he's got the PPW championship.
That's why I mentioned world champion. I did mention it.
Yeah, he's actually has been overseas a few times. I think he told me that he went to Finland for a match. He also went to Mexico along with Ellis Barker and Nathan Black sometime last year. Which fair dues. It's a completely different style to the style that we use here in the UK, and he did. I think he did as really good a job as anyone could.
Dan Adams
he is legitimately that good, for a big guy wrestler.
Oh, for sure, no question.
There's one thing I've kind of noticed: bigger guys, it's not up to a certain point athletically. We can all do the same moves,
right? And
Kemper has kind of shown that he is capable of doing some really athletic feats. I remember one time seeing him do a coast to coast, and I was thinking, "Oh man, shit." But the issue, the thing is, though, when it comes to big guys, I think they have a negative stereotype in a lot of ways, which
sure.
I think we can probably attribute to a lot of the guys in the 80s and 90s who they were big, like 6'6", 300-pound guys who did
because
like
they were
maybe
like out of
3
a
or 4
factory
moves,
line. Because
including the flick of the hair.
they were fat because they came out of a factory line. It was like the
Yeah.
same thing. There was no progress. There was no
Yeah.
growth.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, wrestling is what it is, and people have the style has developed. So a lot of big guys these days, not only do they have to have character, but they also have to have some wrestling skill as well. Which, if you're a big guy, you can't unless you're working another big guy. You can't really just drag someone down and do the whole technical, will of sport type stuff. Not to say that you couldn't, but I don't know. I can't remember who told me this, but it just kind of doesn't look right, if you get my meaning. I mean, by all means, I think Kemper can do chain wrestling. I've seen him do it before, but when you look at Kemper, you just see the big guy who's going to do the whole big roar, thing, and boot someone's head off, and even do a really good vertical jump and drop kick another dude in the face,
Yeah, he's just, I think I just look at him and I said this when he came on the show, and I'm going to get to Ethan Dixon in a second. I just see dollar signs in him. I don't know what it is. I just see dollar signs in him. I just see a guy that I just see him. When I mean overseas, I mean coming here, and I just see him having that ability. He reminds me in a lot of ways of kind of what, if you've seen Franco Varga, not in their wrestling style, but Franco Varga he comes here to the UK and wrestles a lot. He's become a really big, high in demand, independent talent. I could see Kemper conversely coming here stateside and being one of those guys. He's got the look, he's got the face, he's got the move set. There's just something about him. He's got larger than life capabilities here. Let me get to a couple
things. Do you know who he reminds me of?
Tell me.
Andrew Martin, aka Test.
Yes. Yeah, I could see that a little bit. Yeah, I could see, you know what? I could see that in the move set. He's got the personality a little bit. Yeah, I could see a little bit of that in Test. Yeah, Test was a guy, really underrated guy. I think now is starting to get a little bit of his flowers. But if you think about that whole attitude, ruthless aggression era, really, really was a huge player, underrated. Unfortunately, didn't win a world title, but, was a huge part of really some big moments and had some, some great teams and great matches he was a part of. That's a good call there. Let me get to a couple things here. Darlington, the Majestic Theater versus Rocky Jones.
I remember that match. I remember it because I got a fucking cut on the back of my head from that Rocky Jones, that Belgian lad. Basically, I'll explain what happened. Basically, at the start of the match, we'd done some stuff, and he was in the corner, and I was just stalking my way towards him, and he just exploded out the corner, lifted me up, with a double leg, and was charging me to the corner. However, he tripped, and my head went in between the top and middle turnbuckle.
Oh my God!
And my back of my head hit the steel ring post. I was surprised that I wasn't concussed, but and I didn't realize that I was actually hurt until I managed to cut him off, and I noticed there was these little droplets of red on the blue canvas, and I was thinking, oh no, has he hurt himself? And then I just touched the back of my head and realized it was really wet, and I put my hand down, and I had those gloves as we mentioned earlier, and it was
mechanics.
Oh, it's actually my blood. Okay, so yeah. I did as best I could, not to mess up the canvas. Didn't know how bad it was. I was actually cut, and it wasn't until the back when, it.
And Ethan,
I mean, yes. What can I say? When I get in the zone, I really get in the zone.
Well, that's
but yeah. I took off my gloves and I passed them to the camera guy, and it wasn't until after I got after the match had finished and I went out the ring, and I was like, yeah, look at this stuff. And the guy that was holding the camera, I believe it was the promoter. He kind of went do not want. No, it was funny in retrospect, but it could have been way serious. So yeah, as soon as I went back, I just got apologized to the promoter for messing up his canvas. He said, no, don't worry about it. Just clean yourself up, and do what you do.
Well, I'm glad
So,
you
yeah,
said.
I got like several like bottles of water, and I'm just going outside the venue, just washing them off, and just trying to get
I'm just
most of
so
the blood
glad you
out.
said that though, because I had one wrestler come on the other day and said that the promoter was so mad at him he didn't pay him. So at least the promoter gave you a nicer
Well, it's
reaction.
me. Like also this promoter. I think the promoter at the time kind of liked me, so I guess that's why they
Well, I
kind of
think
like
that's the big difference, and that's the
yeah,
most important difference here. I got a bunch of comments here. Let me get to them here. That was the most Radu story ever.
yeah,
Also,
pretty much.
Ethan said he watched Kemper at Breakout Wrestling. Yes, Breakout.
Mm,
I know Breakout very, very well. They have a bunch of
yes.
talents that have been on the platform. Why would that big guy avoid contact? Scott Hall and Big Man leapfrogs.
Mm.
Good one there.
Yeah, I
Kemper
suppose
is
so.
on
Like it depends,
wrestling.
like on the context. Like a lot of things in wrestling is context dependent. Like under most circumstances we wouldn't do the things that we do in wrestling, but because the circumstances of wrestling are what they are, we can by proxy find some kind of excuse for it, even if it is kind of like a very like one-off incident. Like
I wanted to ask you, what are your goals coming up for the rest of the year? I always ask wrestlers this question, and you obviously have, I know you had a break, you've come back, you've reinvented your career, but I'm always curious. I ask people this all the time. What are your goals here for the rest of this year?
well, I've got a bucket list of people that I'd like to work with. I've got a bucket list of places that I'd like to go wrestle at. But for the most part, I'm just here to have fun and just do what I can do. Like there's loads like I've all the stuff that I already have booked hasn't been announced, so
Well, yeah,
I don't want to.
on
I'm
this
not spoiling
platform,
anything.
yeah,
I'm
not
not
on this
spoiling
platform.
anything, so
I
don't ask me.
guarantee you, this somebody will say, Tom, what did you do now on Sportswire? What did they say now? Because I guarantee you, it happens all the time. So if you know you can't say it here, don't say it, please.
Okay. But yeah, for the most part, love to. I actually love to go to TNT Extreme in Liverpool.
Oh, I know TNT.
I've only been to Liverpool once in my lifetime, and that was for like the first ever Ring of Honor show in the UK. This is it's like
That's a
at least
while
15
ago
years now. Yes, a while back. I actually got to see Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson unify the world and pure titles and absolute bloodbath. Yeah, it was an experience.
Oh, that's definitely experience. And TNT is a company that I know very well. Another company that we've talked about here quite a bit. Also, here, let me come back to Ethan. It was the promoter, ring announcer Sanjay, who was the cameraman.
Yeah, Sanjay.
And also, Ethan would like to see you at Breakout Pro Wrestling.
Okay, get in contact with the promoter and tell him to send him my way.
I think he knows the promoter very well, and I think that where he's training, that promoter knows him very well there. But I'm going to move away from that in a second. But I was curious, and I want to tie this in a couple of. I realize I've only got so much time with you, and I could ask you 10 hours worth of things, but I can't. I want to talk about the British deathmatch hardcore scene for a couple of reasons, because obviously it's going to tie into somebody that I would actually love to see you wrestle one day, because you and him have so much similarities in what you do in the ring, although I think you're a little bit more of a different wrestler, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But talk to me about just the scene overall. I know you touched upon it earlier, but talk to me about what are some of the things you like, what are some of the things that you don't, and just what would you like to see more from a scene that you've become really well adversed, and I know you've even been covered in, and maybe have some dates coming out, the upcoming for our audience, that maybe we could see you, for promotions at, or more or less.
You want me to talk about the promotions in the UK that regularly do death matches?
And I think you've been in some of them in the past and things like that. Okay, I think that for the audience, yeah.
All right. So the main promotion in the UK that does death matches is known as Rise Underground, or Radical Innovation in Sports Entertainment. Very interesting name, I will tell you that. I've actually got their T-shirt in my wardrobe next to me, and also I've got my cat here who is attempting to infiltrate the conversation. Yes, hello. This is Cav, and she's also very shy, and I'm going to have to make sure that her hands don't come up, because she has this nasty habit of extending her paw
Well, I won't keep you forever.
In a very questionable manner. Let's just put it that way. And
Okay,
I don't want
fair
to.
enough. Fair enough.
You're already on the risk of being cancelled and getting disparaged and all that for things that you say. You don't want a cat with very questionable political views.
Fair play. Duly noted.
Anyway, pardon me. They just want to be let out. I'll finish.
Absolutely. And while I do that here, let's get to some plugs here. If you want to follow Radu Bulat, here's the platforms here. And also want to say hello to my buddy, Mr. Hillbilly Tilly from the great state of Alabama. Says hello from across the pond. Nice to wake up to Sportswire Radio. And he also says, hey, he brought his cat onto Sportswire also before. So we're pet friendly on Sportswire. So it's okay.
Yeah, not my pet.
Good deal. I
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, Michael
there's Rise in the Ground.
Yeah. Michael Caden's come up. We've talked about him.
Yeah.
We talked about Rise. You're obviously, what would you like to see from the scene? Obviously, for really the reason I wanted to bring it up, because there's a guy that you happen to know that I know very well and I've interviewed, a name Hardcore. Hardcore has wrestled Man Pondo, and Hardcore is a guy that's traveled. He's wrestled a who's who of people, and some of the things he's done. Well, he's actually had a syringe put up his lip. I hope you haven't had that yet done. I know you've had a
not
TV.
yet, but if I'm ever in a match with Jack Bennett, it's more than likely going to happen. But
fair play. But
he's the guy. He is the guy who is famous for having a syringe put through his hand.
I feel like I heard that story before, but I'm curious. Hardcore is a guy that's spoken of a lot here on this platform. I've interviewed him, and what would you like to see more in the hardcore scene in the UK? That's basically my question to sum it up.
More of me. Just kidding.
No. I mean, anything that, because I'm curious, because again, I know a lot of the US scene. I know a lot about the underground wrestling in it. I have all the guys come on, and we talk about this person and that. But I mean, what would you like to see here in the UK that would?
It's difficult to put into words, but I would love to see. I would love to see a slightly more broader variety of matches, because one of the biggest criticisms that I keep getting told by a mutual friend of ours, I'm not going to out anyone's names.
Don't do it.
No, I'm not going to do it. Sometimes it can be a little bit same, but then again, the United Kingdom is a very small country. I mean, let me put it this way: we're about the same size of New Jersey, I think.
I've heard. Yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we have a very small pool of talent compared to the United States. And we have a number of people that do hardcore matches, but they won't do death matches. And the number of people that do death matches in this country, it's only just into the double digits. Like, I think it's about maybe 15 people, 15 to 20 people that do death matches like fairly regularly. A lot of them I'm friends with. A lot of them I love to death. The problem is they all have like their own little like promotion. They have like their home promotions, and there is a lot of like crisscrossing. But having a little bit more of a broad, interchangeable number of matches would be might be interesting. I'm just the wrestler. I'm not the promoter.
Okay, so
I
think I know where this is going, and I'm going to put it out there. And I don't know if it'll ever. And I'm going to get to comments. There's more people that want to say things. I want to say hello to some people, and people are like, "Wow, Tom is up early. This is never going to happen before, and it probably won't." But I, as a man, if there's a will and a way, I would love to see you wrestle hardcore, because some of the stuff that hardcore has put himself through, and you both have been put through TVs. He's obviously, we talked about the syringe needle. I've seen him wrestle, and actually the Rise and the NCW venues that you wrestled in are very similar to venues he's wrestled in. I think your technical skills are a little different than his, but I think in terms of the overall, what you guys both bring to the table, I'm going to put it out there, because I'm going to make sure that Mr. Hardcore listens to this out there. He's Mr. No guts, no glory, no guts, no gory. He's total effing chaos. He's all that stuff. If he's really about total effing chaos, and his group is really worldwide, they have members in Canada, and they want to do all these different things. If you're really Mr. Hardcore about total effing chaos, you find a way and you get this man, Radu Bulat, Romania's best athlete, Romania's best wrestler, here stateside, and let's see who is really the true hardcore deathmatch standard. You know what? I'm even going to go further in saying this, because as the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportzwire Radio, your voice of all wrestling, the Reverend Tom Bryce, I'm going to say this. The winner of Hardcore versus Radu Bulat will be the true Sportswire Radio Hardcore Deathmatch King. Putting it out there right now for the audience. There you go. But
I'm not saying that I wouldn't want to go over to the United States and, work a match against Hardcore, but all I'm just going to say is get me a plane ticket.
Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? I'm sure that somebody's going to hear this out there. Maybe you, Mr. Hardcore, you obviously have a lot of connections, Mr. Hardcore. You've obviously traveled all these different places. I know where you live. I know you're not too far away from New York City. I know you can certainly do something out there that I think a lot of people and a lot of fans of this platform, because, we always hear about all these guys that are supposed to be hardcore from the United States, like Mr. Hardcore, like Obey, like Mac 10, who are in this thing called the Carnage Cup, which is a huge thing amongst hardcore and deathmatch wrestlers. My good friend Jimmy Controversy, my good friend here, Mr. Jake Matthews, Mikey Anarchy, who's back, you could probably play Connect the Dots with. Guys like Omen Black, guys like even maybe Atomic Titan. But the point is that if you really want to see who's the true Sportswire Radio Hardcore Deathmatch King, this match has to happen. Hardcore, you're on the clock. I'm going to make sure you hear about this later on this afternoon. And I have some more comments here because we'll have a little bit of more time here with Mr. Radu Bulat because he's a very busy man and he's going to certainly say a couple of different things. And Mr. Levitt wants to say the Carnage Cup was named after him. It might have been. I mean, it could have been.
I very much doubt that, Chris. But
well, you never know, though. Well, how do you know? I'm going to ask him that question when he comes back on the show. Want to say another person, by the way, that I think would be great for you to go on his podcast. He's got 120,000 followers, by the way, 40,000 and a half on YouTube, 79,000 on TikTok. And it's his 40th birthday tomorrow. I'm celebrating his birthday live, 10 o'clock Ethiopian value. Happy big 40. His name is James Taylor. Now, he's got a lot more fans, a lot more friends, a lot more followers than me. So if you go on his show, I'm sure some promoter will say, now we're going to book Radu Bulat. Whereas with me, you come on to my show, some promoter is going to say, let's not book Radu Bulat after his last appearance on this show. But with James Taylor,
I'll be honest with you. Deathmatch wrestling can be. I actually had a conversation with someone just the other day about this. I kind of came to the conclusion that deathmatch wrestling it opens some doors, but it closes some others. So it's kind of like bit of give and take. One inspires joy, the other does not inspire joy.
Well, I think that we're certainly having some joy today. And also, let me get to a bunch of people here. First of all, Daniel Banner says, can you dethrone Matt Cardona as the king of death matches? He wants you to dethrone Matt Cardona. That's what he wants.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Matt Cardona is the fucking king as far as I'm concerned. At least until Nick Gage gets his hands on him, in which case, okay.
Well, it's a good point. And certainly Matt Cardona actually...
How he's reinvented himself is an example to every indie wrestler out there. So,
absolutely. And I can't hate a man that grew up just miles from where I grew up. I really can't, because he grew up literally miles from where I live.
It just goes to show that there is life after the WWE.
I think that absolutely. And I think, listen, Cody Rhodes, obviously, didn't he do that once upon a time? He went to the independents for a little while. So Bobby Lashley did it for a while. Drew McIntyre. So there's guys that went out there, if you can do it, make your own path. You've done it. So a lot of people can. Tom, you should bring on Varric Vane. He's an American wrestler. Let me know. I'm always open to anybody here. Thank you, Mr. Levitt, for that. Sportswire Forever. I appreciate that, because you and KR will come on and certainly take over the show. It'll be an entertaining show.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, they're going to be coming back, and Jack Bennett always has a syringe somewhere in him. He's so underrated, though, as a class wrestler.
Absolutely. He's a way better wrestler than people give him credit. Like, you only need to see some of his matches from Fight Factory to see.
For sure, for sure. And any hardcore promotion should book you, but any promotion should book you as well. Also, I would say the big ones are yes, TNT. I know TNT very well, and
Yeah,
Kumite.
Rise, Kumite, who I've worked for before, Bleeding Gums Wrestling up in Scotland, who gave me
Yeah.
my Scottish debut in November, and I
Oh,
will be going
so
back up there sometime later
hope.
this year.
Well, speaking of Scottish wrestlers, maybe you get a chance. Say hello to two of my friends. One of them you probably heard of because everybody knows him, Davey Blaze. Davey Blaze.
Yep, I worked him on that show.
Do you have okay, Davey Blaze, I gotta say this because this is such a small world. Davey Blaze, I had on twice. The first time, Davey Blaze basically cut his own promo and interviewed himself. The second time, he was actually more subdued because he for whatever reason he was. But I mean, you have any Davey Blaze stories? Because Davey is a man that likes me. By the way, he actually said, "I like you, Tom." So.
I have only ever met him once, but we've talked over like Instagram several times. Mainly just to say, thank you for taking care of me. And we were just talking about like promoters as well. And I'm not gonna stooge him off. But we were talking about one potential promoter, and I'll just say we shared a few jokes, which I'm not going to repeat on the air.
Don't do it here, because there are promoters that watch my shows, follow me on Facebook like you, and they will say, what did you do now? Because I have actually had promoters tell me that. In fact, I had one promoter that actually told me I shouldn't book Mr. Levitt on the show, but I actually said, no, I'm actually going to book Mr. Levitt on Sportswire. And
is it that dude from NSOR? Because if so, I think I know.
Well, it was him and another individual that I shall name nameless, but also he's a holy man, basically. Put it this way, he's a holy man. That's asking. Right. He's asking for money now to help him in his thing, and he's now asking for recommendations in Chicago to get him place. But I speak no more. The person in Ensa, he got buried to a point that he probably is not even 6 feet under, but 12 feet under. But let me come back to a couple of different things here. Wrestling has taught me a lot, and I want to pick all wrestlers' brains to gain knowledge. Good point, Daniel. Thank you
Good
for
mentality.
That. Yeah, that's kind of the guy. I think Mr. Levitt kind of said who it might be. But, speaking of other,
yes,
I'm going to plead the fifth on that because I still happen to like the promoter, and he will definitely say, "What did you say now?"
He's never said a bad thing about me, so I'm not going to.
No, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. Unfortunately, some promoters try to be with the in crowd, and they do things that they should when they think about it in the long run, they'll know what they did. I want to spell to one of my buddies out there, Mr. Bradley Hiley, who was also once upon a time a wrestler, maybe once upon a time again a wrestler. He's also a very successful podcaster, a very successful vlogger, and I recommend his podcast as well. And he's a great speaker, speaks a lot better than me. He's got a lot more charisma, and he's a lot better looking. And also, by the way, Ethan wants to say, were you in the 5-way scramble match with Davey Blaze?
Yeah, that was the match where
okay.
Yeah, it was me, Davey Blaze, Jay Vertigo, Ellis Barker, and Franco Fate. All of them, I'm absolutely like positive on.
Yeah, I think you know what, I'm going to ask Davey about that. Is that on YouTube somewhere?
It's not on YouTube, but it is on IWTV. You will need a $10. You will need a $10 subscription in order to see the match. But I'll tell you what, $10 a month is absolute peanuts compared to the amount of the video library that they have. Like, it's pretty much every single CZW show. They have pretty much every single Chikara show. A lot of the IWA Mid-South back catalogue, and hundreds and hundreds of
I think if I'm not
mistaken, you're pretty much spoiled for choice.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure they have a lot, even the old NWA Wild Side stuff, all that old stuff.
Think so.
You can catch that. I have a quick story on this real quick. There was somebody about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that was actually trying to do something in the UK with this. And they had a collection of a lot of the family-friendly companies. It was like Odyssey Pro Wrestling. It was the LWF. It was a few other companies that were mixed in there. And I actually offered to buy this website and this company. But for whatever reason, the editor and the person, I didn't want to sell it. And I was like, no, I'll buy it. I'll maintain it. I wanted it because I interview all these guys. And they just didn't want to. And I really wanted something like that here in the UK. Also, let me get to a couple of other things here. Brad Coleman is here, by the way, another pro wrestler in our Hall of Fame. Big announcement coming out shortly. I hope you come on Sportswire to talk about it. Gareth Angel is a great guy. Got me into Kingdom. I've been there ever since. I know a few give him grief, but I'm not judging. Everyone has an opinion. Yeah, Gareth's a great guy. I love Gareth. Love Gareth to death. He's been a big supporter of mine. And I want to put that out there. We say hello to Gareth Angel. Yes, and Mr. Levis is a good guy. So let's move on from that. I want to ask you a couple quick things here. My first thoughts are, in terms of asking you, I have to ask you, before we move on to a few final things, Paul Malin. Give me a Paul Malin story about that match, because Paul Malin, we spoke about him briefly, but memories of that match.
Well, believe it or not, Paul Malin is actually training one of my cousins, my Polish cousin Ollie. How are you doing?
Really?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I first met Ollie, or main event Muzzy, I should probably say. Sorry for using your shoot name, man. He started training in Aspire in Derby, which is like this. It's a small promotion / company, but they did. Malin does a lot for the community in Derby, and hats off. He's probably one of the best in-ring workers that I've ever been in. But insofar as it's so easy to set a match up with him, and he knows how to deal with people who don't have the full stack of cards. Let's just put it that way, especially.
I got the reference. I got it.
Yeah, Malin. Well, actually, I want to get to the cousin bit. I worked my cousin on a show which we did in Retford, I think it was. It's this small town in Yorkshire, and I didn't realize that he was my actual cousin until several months down the line, when we were both in the audience at this show in Sutton. And apparently what had happened is my mum and his mum were friends on Facebook, and he just won the Aspire title. And she just posted posted a picture up of him doing the whole thing with the title up like that, and his mum had just basically done the usual thing that mothers do on Boomer Book, saying I love my son, all caps, he's a good wrestler and all that stuff. And then my mum posted a picture of me from a show from years ago, saying, "Oh, my son's a wrestler as well. Wasn't that coincidence?" And then Ollie, sorry man, I'm using your shoot name again. I'm using your government name anyway. So yeah, he basically posted a message on there saying, "Hang on, that's Radu. I worked him about 6 months ago," and I didn't realize this until I got to the show. And we were just talking, and he just offhandedly mentioned, "So yeah, apparently we're second or third cousins." And I was like,
"Oh my God, what a small world!"
Are you? I'm not saying you're lying, but can you please show me some proof? And so he showed me the thread, and it's yeah, apparently we're cousins. And every now and then, every time that me and Malin see each other on the road, we just take a picture of ourselves together, just do a wrestler thing, and we just send it to my cousin. It's hello.
Oh my God! Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
He's getting his name out. He's only doing little micro indies around the borderline of South Yorkshire and Derbyshire.
Wow.
But, at least he's actually getting his
Paul's a great guy, though.
And getting the reps,
Paul's a great guy. Paul is just,
absolutely.
I couldn't.
He's not a fan of the deathmatch stuff, but
Wow, the match you had with him was totally not the 360 of it. I mean, he's definitely, there's a lane, but he's just a phenomenal talent. Yeah. Phenomenal. He's in better shape now than I think when you wrestled him. I mean, he's he's really just, I couldn't say enough good things, but obviously another one of those guys. I got in touch with him because there's a company called New British Promotions Wrestling, which Kemper was a part of, a bunch of other guys, and the promoter was trying to promote it, and he had me interview him. I had a few other guys that came on, the Juggernaut, John Allen. That's actually how I got Kemper. Through this company, NBPW, and Paul was on, and I had Dante Durden and a bunch of other talents from the company. And, Paul was just, I mean, what an honor it was to have Paul. And I couldn't say enough good things about him. Brad Coleman, I will get in touch with you for sure. And, all right, so I want to ask you then.
I will say one last thing about Paul Malin. I really want to work him again. And we don't have to do any of the hardcore stuff. It'll just be a straight technical match.
Oh, listen, I watched you with
Kieran McQueen. At least before we're both too old to be sticking around in this bloody business.
Listen, I watched you with Kieran McQueen. mean, that was a pure technical match. I mean, that was a straight up wrestling match. So, you can still do them. You're not limited in that sense. And, I have to ask you about Lou Nixon, wrestling Lou Nixon. I mean, that was
just... fucking Lou. I love that dude. Yeah, like the dude is legit. Like, I mean, maybe not like legit, but the dude knows how to actually fight for one. And I think Caden said it best. Caden is convinced that Lou Nixon is a genuine psychopath because he doesn't seem to have any limits as far as the stuff that he'll do. But he has a good mind on his head, and I'm so happy that he was able to absolutely kill it over WrestleMania weekend this year. I think he had something like 8-9 different matches, not all of them death matches, but he had a couple.
I was following.
Yeah, I think he had a shoot style match for Josh Barnett's Blood Sports.
GCW. Yep. Yeah.
And I know he came over. He returned back to the UK with the RPW belt, so you could safely say it was a really good outing. Lou Nixon, easily one of my favorite people to be around in wrestling. Absolute gentleman, absolute laugh riot. He drinks all my fucking red stripe, but I'm friends with him, so it's okay.
I love it when guys like him go overseas or come here to the States. Jin is a name I mentioned, and Dan Evans is another guy, and one of my other buddies, Mike Angus, and who does a great job doing ring announcing. And I see people that come from here in the UK to come here. I love that stuff. I love it. I wish that we would see more of it, and that's why I wanted to bring up Lou. And I wanted to ask you before I get to closing thoughts. I always ask people like yourself this question, and answer it any way you want. But if there were one or two moments that stood out most in your career, what would they be?
Considering that I'm pretty much, I've been around for a while, so there haven't exactly been that many. But honestly, the first time I ever got a championship belt stands out, purely because I didn't know. I was told that we were at the time we were kind of like transitioning, champions and all that stuff. So we're just going to give you a bit of a moment in the limelight. But it was different. I've never really been that much of a mark for collecting belts or championships and things.
I personally think wins and losses means nothing in wrestling.
For the most part, I'm more concerned with having really good matches rather.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for saying that, by the way, because to me, I think it's about performance. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Granted, there is some degree of prestige when it comes to holding a title, or winning a tournament, which in the deathmatch world is way more prestige. There's a sense of difference, but there's. Yeah, like I said, there is a degree of prestige to holding a title, but at the end of the day, if your performance to get that title wasn't the best that it could be, you may as well have not had it before, not had it at all. Which I think I did fairly well on that night. Maybe in retrospect, we can always say we could have done things better, or we could have done things different, but it was different. It was an experience for me. The first time that I ever wrestled a proper death match is a memorable experience for me, mainly because of just all the circumstances that led up to it. It is listed on my YouTube channel, but it was basically a three-way match between myself, the former Voodoo Queen Blue She, and my favorite guy in the UK scene right now, Tomby. Tomby, easily one of the most soundest guys ever.
I'm muted. Ethan Dixon actually had mentioned that just now, so that's why I brought it
up. I've not wrestled him one-on-one before, but I would like to. Though we are teaming at the moment in Scotland, so it is what it is.
It's a great moment there. It's definitely a great moment. I wanted to, before we get to closing thoughts here, if you want to see more from Radu, this is also his Instagram page, where if you want to buy some merchandise. Now, unfortunately, for whatever reason, Big Cartel doesn't sell merchandise to the States, so I would actually like to get in touch with you maybe later this week.
Just send me a message over Twitter, over Instagram, even my Facebook page. We'll
And
set up a care package, shall we say? I've not only got T-shirts, but I've also got 8x10s. I've got smaller pictures, and I've also got used weapons as well. Forks,
well, I don't know if I
needles,
could use
broken
weapons in
kendo
the
sticks,
house,
that type of thing.
but
I've got anything and everything that you could ever want.
I definitely want to certainly, make sure we get a T-shirt because I'm big on shirts. Because for me, at this point, I always look at every time I'm on Sportswire, I have to put on my work uniform, meaning a wrestling shirt. So I would definitely want to get a wrestling shirt. But this is all of your social media page, so all the videos, all the good stuff. If you want to certainly book Mr. Vampire himself, Romania's best athlete wrestler. There's his Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can see him here. The Lou Nixon reference, all that great stuff here. Previous shows he's been on, opponents he wants to wrestle, magazine
books that I've read
references.
as well. I've got a very, I've got a big library of books here.
I used to be in a book club when I was in college, but I haven't been in college in a few years, so it's been a while since I've read a book or two.
It's just more a case of like, I got into a reading habit during lockdown, and I've just continued it since.
You know what? I wish I read a lot more. Maybe that's why I wouldn't say so many dumb things. But different conversation for a different time. I know I could talk with you all day, and I want to ask you one more question before we get to closing thoughts. What do you want to say to anybody out there that has supported you and anybody that's hearing from you the first time, and why they should come along and join you on this really interesting journey? Because you've had a really interesting career. You've reinvented yourself. You're doing a lot of different things. You've wrestled some really cool people out there, and you're doing some really cool things. So what would you say to those two groups, the people that have supported you and the people that are hearing you the first time, and why they should join you?
Well, to the people that supported me in my journey ever since I first started it in this dingy gym in the middle of Sheffield, thank you so much. Thank you so fucking much for making this dumb gypsy's life so much more enriched by getting involved in this business that we call professional wrestling. For everyone else who wants to know what you'll see if you ever come to a show that I'm booked on, well, it depends whether it's family friendly or 18 plus. If it's family friendly, I'm gonna give you the best. I'll give you the best match that I can. I'll do everything that you'll kind of expect for a guy of my stature and a guy with my eccentricities. Let's just put it this way. And well, if it's 18 plus. The only 3 words that I can say to describe what I do in the middle of the ring is homicidal black metal.
Ladies and gentlemen, this man, I got a feeling that if he wants it one day, maybe one day in the next few months, that we bring him on, and not only hopefully we get that match with Hardcore, but most importantly, maybe he could join some other people in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, alongside the likes maybe of a Dean Allmark and R.P. Davis and my buddy Luke Leyland, who's fought in Dombay, amongst other people. Bentley, the current BTW and Kingdom Wrestling World Champion, and only if he wants it. He is, after all, Mr. Vampire, and he might suck my blood if I don't give him the induction the right way. Or after all, seeing my blood yesterday. Actually, I'm gonna make you laugh before we say closing thoughts. When I did my video to announce you, it got so many reactions that one of my listeners, I don't want to say who the listener was, actually called me up about 30 minutes after I posted the video. She said, "Tom, what happened? Did you get beat? Who beat you? Who beat you up? What happened to you?" And I said, "No, it was just introducing."
Are you feeling okay, Tom? Is there anyone I can call?
Yes. She said, what's wrong with you? What happened? This isn't like you. You were bleeding all over your face. What happened? And I said, I was just trying to show the importance of Radu Bulat, who's one of the biggest deathmatch hardcore wrestlers in the UK. She's like, "Oh,
I don't know about biggest, but
well,
give it time."
you on my platform you are." And then she was kind of like, "Oh, okay, well it worked." She was like, "Well, it worked. Yeah, you got my attention." So okay, but that was the point. But obviously, we don't want that to happen. We'll see. Hopefully, Mr. Bulat would want to come on and maybe take that induction. Maybe certainly Mr. Carnage and Mr. KR coming back on, but different conversation for a different time. It's time to give you the floor. I want to give you any closing thoughts, anything else you want to plug, share, or say. This has been an absolute hardcore amount of fun. Hopefully, we've done such a thing that we can come back for another one, and I turn it over to you and I pass the baton.
Well, I've already shilled out my my big cartel site, my socials. So
Back up.
yeah, we'll just put him right back up. Why not?
That's what I do. That's what I do in Sportzwire.
I could probably honestly, I could. There is an untold amount of people that I have to thank, for getting me to this point. I have to thank Michael Caden, first of all, for giving me some of the best advice ever. As far as like what I'm supposed to be doing in like these death matches and not killing myself. And also he's just generally a really cool guy to be around. So there is that. Lou Nixon, despite the fact that he always steals my red stripe, I say steal, I give it to him, is easily one of the guys that I've really loved being on shows with. So yeah, big thanks to him. Also, big thanks to Nathan and Liam for starting up PPW and giving me the means to be able to pursue this weird and wacky world of deathmatch wrestling, and actually make me a way better wrestler than I've ever been in my entire life. And like I said at the beginning, earlier in this broadcast, I came to PPW with the lowest of expectations because I've been to plenty of wrestling schools that will just take your money and they will overpromise and underdeliver. PPW is the one wrestling school out there that I've been to where it was the exact opposite. They didn't promise me anything that they couldn't deliver, and when they did deliver, they delivered in spades. And I'm not the only person that has said this. There's plenty of people who have started at the lowest dredges of, you could, like the most shitty indie professional wrestler you can imagine. And thanks to the tutelage and the patience of Liam Slater and Nathan Black, they've gone, their work rate has just exploded to the point where, I don't recognize. It's like, fucking hell, is this the same person? So yeah, if you're in Sheffield, or if you're in the South Yorkshire region, or if you can get to the PPW facility, by all means get in contact with Liam Slater and Nathan Black. See what the whole thing is like, and see whether or not this wrestling business is for you. I could go on by thanking all the promoters out there that have given me a chance to pursue this dream of mine. But I'm just noticing we're about an hour and a half into this conversation, so maybe I'll just list the key ones that I can think of.
Sure,
Andrew Crammond at Bleeding Gums, Malachi Matt at Kumite, Daniel Dougherty at Rise, and there's probably a lot other that I'm forgetting at the moment. But needless to say, thank you. You are loved, and hopefully we will work together again.
No comment, because I had Mustafa Khan on a few weeks ago, and when I had Mustafa Khan on, it was like, well, you said this about UKW, and you said that, and I said to those people there was namely one wrestler who had a bad attempt at a podcast, or another one that certainly, I don't want to go into it, but I basically said, well, this is Mustafa Khan, and if you try to hijack my show with Mustafa Khan, I'm going to make sure that I out you. I'm going to make sure that you never go on any podcast again. So I get the point, but certainly this is what we want to focus on. Focus on the positive. And there's two things I always say. All wrestling matters, and the line, together we will win. Together, when we're together, meaning we will always have the best outcome. So let's all be together. And just like with you, all the great things, and you can always mention any promoter here. And I think it also says, by the way, before we go, you were here an hour and 36 minutes, but when you did the other podcast, you were probably like, oh, let me get out of here. I'm bored. With this one, like, oh, wow, we've got people coming in. We saw matches. We got to see a little bit of everything here. As Joel Cobra put it best, one of my buddies, Joel Cobra, said, coming onto Sportswire is like coming on the UK version of Ryan Seacrest covering wrestling. So that's kind of what we do here on Sports, but we make it a little entertaining. It's lively. It's fun. And, obviously Mr. Levitt had a tongue-in-cheek comment, but I love Mr. Levitt. I love Mr. Necro Daddy. I want more Jake Carnages. I want more KRs, and I want to see him back on Sportswire, and that will happen. Yeah. And I want to see you back on, my friend, and just want to thank you and congratulations on all the success. I'm going to certainly hope to have you back on. I hold you to it. I'm going to tell Mr. Hardcore on Instagram later on by posting a clip and tagging him about what I asked, and he's going to be on the clock there with Total Effing Chaos and his buddies.
Just get me a plane ticket. That's all I'm saying.
Well, Well, I'll tell you what, he can certainly make that happen. But I look forward to that, ladies and gentlemen. This was the one and only Mr. Vampire himself. He is Romania's best athlete and wrestler. He is Mr. Radu Bulat. You will see him most notably in Pursuit Pro Wrestling. They are doing a phenomenal job there. Liam Slater and Nathan Black. Shout out to them. Shout out to all the great people that are in that company. Kemper as well, who's been on this platform. And yep, get that shirt. Go support them on YouTube. Over 2,000 plus subscribers.
They still have some if you want to buy them.
And buy them. Make sure you buy them if you're anywhere out there. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters. If you're on sportswireradio.org, you're going back to your regularly scheduled programming. I will be back here 11 o'clock Eastern time with Alan Michaels, rapper and wrestler, to talk about his upcoming potential return to the ring and more. So until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, on the number one global station that is Sports Wire Radio. And all wrestling matters. And together,